The sound of heels clicked against the marble floor like a metronome measured precise, unapologetically sharp. Vivian Langford didn't glance up as the elevator doors slid open to reveal the 16th floor executive suite of the Langford Arts Institute. Her assistants trailed behind her tablets in hand, murmuring about schedule changes and media calls. But her eyes were locked on the east-facing windows where Charleston's morning light painted gold across the water of the harbor. She had 3 minutes before the board arrived. 3 minutes to be alone at the head of the long glass table that had once belonged to her father. She placed her phone on its smooth surface. A notification blinked on screen. New donor tier proposal from PR team. She didn't open it. Outside the conference room, the janitor moved quietly, rolling his cart down the hallway mop bucket, sloshing gently. He wore a gray uniform, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His name tag read Cal. She didn't look at him. Vivian Jordan. Her assistant spoke carefully. The museum director will be late. She's caught in that gallery protest down on King Street. Vivian waved a hand without turning. She can reschedule. Everyone else is here. Inside the room was cold, modern, perfect. A gallery of polished ambition, just like her life. She adjusted her jacket, squared her shoulders, and let the silence press in. Silence never scared her. It sharpened her. Outside the glass, Cal Mercer wiped down the nearby windows, his movements steady and unhurried. He wasn't watching her, but he was aware of the tension inside the room, the hush before performance, the quiet panic people tried to hide in expensive shoes and expensive haircuts. He'd been cleaning this building for 6 weeks. He'd learned not to speak unless spoken to. He'd learned who people were when they thought no one was looking. And he never forgot a face, especially not hers. Vivian Langford, heiress, power broker, daughter of the man who once dragged Cal out of a flooding ship compartment with nothing but willpower and a belt strap. But she didn't know that. She'd smiled right past him every morning like he was part of the floor. Cal liked it that way, most days. That morning, though, something felt different. Jordan Vivian said suddenly. My phone. Where is it? Jordan blinked. You just had it. I set it down. Vivian snapped, scanning the table. It's not. Her voice stopped. At the far end of the conference room, her phone sat neatly on the table edge. Cal was standing beside it, rag in hand, polishing the glass where a ring of coffee had dried. Vivian's gaze narrowed. Don't touch that. Cal's eyes flicked up. It was slipping off the edge, he said simply. She walked over slow and deliberate heels, tapping once more. Behind her, the board members were arriving, soft greetings, the shuffle of chairs, voices preparing for performance. Vivian reached for the phone, then paused. The case was loose, a faint separation along the edge. She frowned, pressed her thumb against it. The casing popped with a soft click. Something dropped, a small metallic sound, almost delicate. It rolled a few inches and stopped near her hand. Vivian stared. It was a military dog tag. Her breath hitched. She reached for it slowly, as if it might vanish if she moved too fast. The tag was scratched, the chain broken, but the engraving was unmistakable. Cyrus Langford. Her father. The world around her dulled, the voices blurred. Her father's name felt hot in her hand. She hadn't seen this tag since he died. It wasn't even part of the memorial display. She'd assumed it had been lost during his final deployment. No one ever told her otherwise. She looked up. Cal was already stepping back, folding his rag neatly. What is this? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Cal looked at her calmly. I believe it belongs to you. The boardroom had fallen quiet. A few members stared in confusion. Jordan's eyes darted between them. Vivian clenched the tag in her fist. Where did you get this? Cal met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Long story," he said. "You'll tell me," she said sharper now, "after this meeting." Cal nodded once. "Yes, ma'am?" She wanted to ask more. She wanted to accuse him of something, but she didn't know what. All she could do was grip the tag and feel her hands begin to shake. Her father had been the last person who made her feel seen without expectation. He'd left her this legacy, this building, this name, and yet he'd never told her he'd given this to someone else. She turned back toward the table. The board had already begun whispering. Vivian smoothed her jacket and slid into her chair. "Let's begin." But her voice cracked slightly, and everyone heard it. Outside the glass, Cal rolled his cart back toward the elevator. He didn't look back. He'd kept the tag for almost a decade. Through cold jobs, graveyard shifts, and miles of silence, he'd waited for the right moment to return it. He just hadn't expected the moment to feel like this. Downstairs in the staff lounge, Maisie's drawing sat tucked in his backpack. Crayons on folded printer paper, a girl and her dad hand in hand. Underneath it, "Respect is a quiet language." He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "Dad's gonna be home late. Big day. Be good." He hit send. And upstairs in a room full of money and glass, Vivian Langford stared at her father's tag. And for the first time in years, she wasn't sure what she was supposed to say. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The rain started just after noon, a soft, steady drizzle that made the old brick of the Langford Institute glisten under the low Charleston sky. From the upper windows you could see the harbor blurred and silver like a memory trying to disappear. Vivian stood at her office window, still holding the dog tag. She hadn't planned on canceling her afternoon meetings, but after the board left, she waved Jordan off with a clipped, "Reschedule everything." She couldn't sit through budget reviews while that piece of cold metal burned a hole in her palm. The engraving was so faint now, her father's name nearly worn smooth, but it was real. How had it ended up in her janitor's hands? More importantly, why now? She turned the tag over again and again, like maybe it would give her a different answer the 4th or 5th time. Jordan knocked lightly before cracking the door. "There's a student showcase in the North Wing this afternoon. You usually make an appearance." Vivian didn't turn. "Tell them I'm working remotely." Jordan hesitated. They were expecting a speech. "Then you give one." Vivian said too fast. She softened a beat later. "Please." Jordan nodded, lingering in the doorway for a second longer. "Do you want me to check on him?" he asked. Vivian turned slowly. "The janitor. He didn't go home. I saw him in the loading dock hallway. Looked like he was checking the wall units." She didn't respond. Her eyes dropped to the tag in her hand. "I'll handle it," she said quietly. Downstairs, the building hummed with soft activity. Students were hanging artwork, older donors wandered the hallways pretending to admire paintings while quietly judging who was in attendance. Cal was in the back corridor, kneeling near the electrical panel that powered the North Wing lights. One of the breakers had been flickering for days, but no one noticed, or no one cared, until today. He heard the steps before he saw her. He didn't need to look up to know it was her. Her footsteps were always deliberate, always spaced exactly the same. Confident. Controlled. "You lied to me." Vivian's voice was low but unmistakable. Cal stood slowly wiping his hands on a cloth he kept in his back pocket. He met her eyes. Calm. Direct. "No, ma'am," he said. "I never lied. You let me believe that tag just appeared, that it was lost, that it was nothing." Her jaw tightened. "How long have you had it?" 10 years, he said. Silence filled the hallway. Vivian blinked, then gave a single breathless laugh. Not from humor, just disbelief. You've had it for 10 years and you just waited for a dramatic moment to drop it on my desk. He didn't flinch. I waited until I knew you were ready to hold it. Her mouth opened, but no words came. He could have left it at that. But he didn't. I didn't come here looking for you, Cal said. I took this job because it was quiet. It let me be near my daughter's school. It let me earn a paycheck without needing to explain my resume to people who want shiny titles and straight answers. He paused. But the day I walked into this building and saw your name on the plaque, I knew I couldn't keep it forever. Vivian crossed her arms. My father never mentioned you. I wouldn't expect him to. You're saying he gave this to you, as a dying wish? No, Cal said gently. As a promise. That stopped her. I was younger, he continued. I was stuck, lost, literally. Below deck during a mechanical failure. Couldn't move. Smoke everywhere. I thought I was going to die in silence. He didn't add detail. Just enough to pull her attention into the gravity of it. Then someone found me. Pulled me out. Sat with me until help came. It was your father. Vivian stared at him. She didn't want to believe it, but she could see it in his face. Not performance, just truth. He gave me that tag and told me, if I don't make it, find her. Return this, and remind her what matters. She opened her mouth to speak, but closed it again. I didn't know what he meant. Not really, Cal said. But when I watched you stand at that podium last month talking about legacy and impact, I realized something. Vivian stepped back slightly. What you were building a statue to a man who didn't care about being seen. You wanted his name in lights when all he wanted was for people to be treated right in the quiet. Her throat tightened. She didn't want to cry in a hallway. She'd built her life to prevent that exact kind of vulnerability. Why didn't he tell me any of this? She whispered. I don't know. She looked at the tag again. Something about it seemed smaller now, not physically, just less heavy. Or maybe she was changing. Did you know him well? No. Just once. 1 hour maybe. But it changed everything. She nodded slowly, then looked up. You could have come to me before. I didn't want anything from you. Vivian swallowed hard. That answer was somehow worse. So now what, she asked. You go back to mopping floors while I figure out what to do with my father's memory. Cal tilted his head slightly. I never stopped doing what mattered, floors or not. That silenced her again. A voice echoed down the hallway marshes. She was leading a group of retirees on a tour. Vivian stepped back, suddenly aware of how this looked. Her in a tailored suit, him in gray. The contrast, the gap, and how small it suddenly felt. You should come to my office tomorrow, she said, voice steadier now. 10 a.m. We'll talk. No uniforms, just people. Cal nodded. Yes, ma'am. She turned to leave, paused, then looked over her shoulder. My father, he always said I talked too loud. Cal gave the faintest smile. Some people need to, some people don't. Vivian held his gaze for a second longer than she needed to. Then she walked away. And for the first time since she took over this place, Cal Mercer saw something soften in her posture, not weakness. Just weight being set down. As he turned back to the panel, the lights flickered once. Then they stayed on. The next morning broke clean and quiet, like the sky had forgotten how to carry weight. Cal Mercer parked his pickup just as the sun spilled over the low buildings of Charleston's east side. He sat for a moment, engine-off fingers resting lightly on the steering wheel. Maisie's voice from the night before still lingered in his mind. Did she cry? She had asked, eyes wide from across the dinner table. No, baby Cal had answered, setting her fork straight. Not the kind that shows. Maisie had thought about that, then nodded like she understood. She always did more than most kids her age. Now he reached over to the passenger seat where her latest drawing sat folded on top of his lunchbox. Another portrait, another quiet message written in purple crayon. Some things don't need a microphone to be loud. He smiled softly, tucked it into his backpack, and stepped out into the morning. Inside the Langford Arts Institute, the air was cool and hushed the way it always was before the day woke up. Cal made his way past the empty cafe, the glass sculpture in the atrium, catching slants of sunrise, and up the side stairs to the administrative floor. 10 o'clock sharp. Vivian's door was already cracked open. "Come in," she said before he could knock. Cal stepped in and noticed the change immediately. No heels, no tailored power suit. Vivian Langford stood by the window in soft sneakers, a blue cardigan, and a light blouse. Her hair was still pinned but looser. Less perfect, more real. She turned, nodded once. "Coffee, no thank you?" She poured a mug for herself anyway. Her movements were precise but slower than usual, like she was still figuring out how to be this version of herself. "I didn't sleep much," she said. "Too many questions." Cal stayed quiet. Vivian held up the tag again. "This little piece of metal has spent 10 years in your pocket." "Why now I told you," Cal said gently. "Because you're ready." She gave a quiet scoff. "You're very sure of yourself for someone who scrubs floor wax." He smiled. "And you're very uncertain for someone who owns the building." Her eyes flicked up. There was a beat of silence. Not hostile, just honest. Vivian leaned against the desk. "Do you know how many people pretend to know who my father was?" she asked. "They talk like they understood him, like he told them everything. But I never heard him speak the way you describe. Never heard him say anything like that." Cal nodded. Maybe he saved it for the moments that mattered. She didn't like that. Not because it was unkind, because it was probably true. "I always thought I had to make his name bigger," she murmured. "More programs, more buildings. I thought if I could amplify it loud enough I'd stop feeling like I failed him." Cal folded his arms, waited. He knew when people needed space to say something they weren't sure they were allowed to. Vivian looked at him again. "You ever lose someone and feel like you never got to prove you were worth the goodbye?" His throat tightened. "Yes." A long pause, soft but sharp around the edges. Vivian stepped around the desk and sat. "Tell me about her. Your wife." Cal hesitated, then took the seat opposite her. "Her name was Rebecca," he said. "She was a teacher, middle school English. Had a way of seeing things in people before they knew it about themselves." Vivian watched him closely. How long? 8 years together. 5 married. She passed right before Maisie turned 4. A subtle shift in her expression, no gasp, no drama. Just a softening around the eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Thank you." Another silence, but this one didn't feel heavy. It felt full. Vivian glanced at the tag again. "He left this with you thinking he might not make it, and instead of rushing to give it to me, you held on to it." Cal looked down, thoughtful. "I wasn't just holding it for you. I was still learning what it meant." And now he looked up. "Now I think I get it." She stood and walked back to the window, sipping her coffee. Her reflection merged with the sunlight across the glass, her outline faint but distinct. "This place is loud, Cal," she said. "The press, the donors, the constant meetings. Sometimes I think I built it to hide in plain sight. You built it to honor someone." She turned. "But did I do that? Or did I turn him into a brand?" Cal didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket. Maisie's drawing. He unfolded it carefully and slid it across the desk. Vivian picked it up, brows lifting slightly. A figure, presumably her, was drawn on a podium under a spotlight. Off to the side, a smaller figure handed her a glowing object, below it in crayon. Not everything has to be seen to be real. Vivian stared at it for a long moment. She drew this. She sees more than most adults. Vivian traced a finger along the edge of the paper. It's unsettling. How close to home this hits. She doesn't know who you are, really. Just what she feels. Vivian folded the drawing gently, like it was made of something fragile. I want to change the Langford Legacy Project, she said suddenly. Cal blinked. You want to what, the gala? The new exhibit, all of it. It's too polished, too loud. My father wasn't a marble statue. He was a man who handed a stranger his name and asked for a promise. She paused, then looked him dead in the eyes. I think I want to build something quieter. Cal tilted his head slightly. You sure the board will like that? I'm not asking them. I'm asking you. He didn't hide his surprise. Me? You're the only person who's made me feel like I'm listening to the truth. He sat back, unsure how to respond. It wasn't a compliment. It was, wait. Vivian stepped closer to the desk. I want you to help me design it, not as staff, as a partner. Cal exhaled slowly. I clean the floors, Vivian. Exactly. You see what touches them. The room held the words like breath. Finally, he nodded once. All right. She smiled, small, tired, real. As he stood to leave, she stopped him at the door. Hey, Cal, he turned. I don't think you just kept a promise, she said. I think you became part of it. He held her gaze. I think you did too. Then he walked out the door, closing behind him, with a quiet click. Vivian stood alone holding a crayon drawing and a military tag. And for the first time since her father died, she didn't feel like she had to perform to be seen. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The Langford Institute glowed under soft amber lighting that evening, casting long reflections across the glass floors and curated gallery walls. The North Wing had been prepped for the upcoming Legacy Gala easels, displaying renderings of the Veterans Tribute Hall staff, scurrying to adjust seating arrangements, floral designers arguing in hushed tones over centerpiece symmetry. Vivian stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like a director who couldn't quite connect with her own play. She'd approved this. Every inch of it, the banners, the speeches, the polished donor wall with names carved deep into faux stone. It was everything a legacy project was supposed to be, and none of it felt right. You look like someone trying to recognize a reflection, came a voice at her side. She turned. Cal stood beside her, still in work clothes, but with his sleeves rolled down this time. The badge clipped to his shirt read, Operations Technician. Jordan had updated it after their morning meeting quietly, without comment. Vivian raised an eyebrow. You snuck in. I was invited. Technically, I said I'd send you notes. You forgot. She almost smiled. They stood in silence for a moment, watching a trio of board members laugh near the champagne table. I don't know how to undo all of this, she said quietly. Then maybe don't undo it, Cal replied. Just change where it leads. Vivienne glanced at him. You always talk like a book my father used to read. Cal gave a soft chuckle. Maybe we read the same one. Before she could answer, Jordan approached, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, he said. The vendor wants approval on the lighting levels for the tribute montage. Also, the press has arrived early. Vivian exhaled slowly. Tell them I'll be available in 20. Jordan hesitated, glanced briefly at Cal, then nodded and left. When he was out of earshot, Cal looked at her carefully. You all right? Vivian blinked, caught off guard by the softness of the question. "I don't know," she admitted. She rubbed her thumb over her wrist absently, a nervous habit she thought she'd broken years ago. "This isn't what I wanted anymore. But I don't know how to stop it without unraveling everything I've built." Cal looked at her, not with judgment, just quiet clarity. "Maybe it's not about stopping. Maybe it's about telling the truth, even if it shifts the ending." She turned to him, suddenly, needing something more than conversation. "Will you stay tonight? For the speech, I'm not dressed for it." "I don't care," she said quickly, then added a beat later, softer. "I'd rather have someone here who knows what matters." He didn't answer right away, but he didn't leave either. Just then, the overhead lights flickered, only for a second, but enough to draw murmurs. Vivian's eyes darted to the gallery entrance where Marcia appeared, breathless. "Emergency team says it's the lower-level breaker panel. Some power disruption from yesterday's rain." Vivian turned to Cal instinctively. He was already stepping forward. "I'll check it. I'll come." "No," he interrupted gently. "You're about to go give a speech. You stay in the light. I'll take care of the dark." Their eyes held for a long moment. She nodded once. As he disappeared into the hallway, Vivian looked down at her phone. She was supposed to begin speaking in 15 minutes. She had no speech. She had a story. Below the gallery, Cal walked the narrow utility corridor, flashlight in hand. The smell of moisture and old drywall filled the air. One panel hummed slightly louder than the others, a warning, not an emergency. He adjusted a few switches, tested the output, rerouted a circuit. Quiet work. Familiar. But as he finished, something unexpected caught his eye. An old sketch, pinned behind a breaker box with yellowing tape. He pulled it free carefully. A child's drawing watercolor faded by time. A young girl sitting in a garden with a man beside her. Words scribbled across the sky. "You don't have to be seen to be loved." Cal swallowed hard. The initials in the corner, C.L. Cyrus Langford. He turned the paper over. A date, almost 30 years ago. A memory someone couldn't bear to throw away. Upstairs, Vivian stood behind the podium, her heart pounding as the lights dimmed, and a hush settled over the crowd. Spotlights. A slideshow began photos of her father, the Institute, the legacy projects. She looked down at her notes, then slowly set them aside. "I was going to tell you about the legacy wing," she began, her voice carrying through the room. "About our budget projections and our new multimedia installations. I was going to say all the right words." She paused. "But something happened this week. Someone returned something to me I didn't even know I'd lost." A ripple moved through the room. The press leaned forward. "My father's name is on this building, on this program, in this speech. But I'm starting to think the most important part of him never wanted to be in any of those places." She took a breath, scanned the crowd until her eyes landed on the back entrance. Cal had slipped in, standing in the shadows, arms crossed. She smiled just a little. "I met someone who reminded me that legacy isn't always loud, that sometimes it lives in the ones who fix what breaks, in the ones who show up before the lights turn on, who leave quietly after the applause." She reached into her pocket, held up the dog tag, and in the quiet that followed it, glinted in the soft light. "This belonged to my father. He gave it to a man he met once. Not because he was important, but because he was real, because he believed in dignity without spotlight. People weren't just listening, now they were feeling it." Vivian glanced toward the back again. "I think it's time we built something quieter, something true." The room fell into a stillness that felt holy. And in that pause, 1 second, maybe 2, Cal felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not recognition, something simpler. like a promise kept. The next morning arrived wrapped in quiet. Charleston's air was heavy with the scent of blooming magnolia and salt. The city moved slowly, early risers, walking dogs, bakery doors cracking open with trays of warm biscuits, old men unfolding newspapers on front stoops. But inside the Langford Institute, something had shifted. People walked with a kind of reverence, like they'd heard a whisper and weren't sure what it meant yet. Cal stood in the break room, filling his travel mug with black coffee. His badge still read, Operations Technician Vacoin. But the way people passed him now, slower, more deliberate, told him that word had gotten around. Vivian's speech hadn't gone viral, but it had gone deep. Morning, Cal, Marcia said, as she entered, her voice calm, but her eyes twinkling. Morning. She poured her tea, then turned to face him, arms folded. I've worked here since the day your girl's daddy bought the building. And I've never seen her speechless the way she was after last night. She wasn't speechless, Cal replied. She just said what mattered. Marcia smiled. Same thing. Before he could respond, the door opened. Vivian. She paused when she saw them. No heels today, either flats, linen blouse, loose curls tucked behind her ears. Still powerful, but something gentler in her presence. Marcia? She nodded. Ma'am, Marcia said, excusing herself with her mug. I'll give y'all a minute. Vivian waited until the door shut before speaking. Everyone's talking, I figured. They're not just talking about the tag, she said, stepping closer. They're talking about you. Cal looked down, unsure what to do with that. I didn't ask for it. I know, she said. That's why it's real. He met her gaze. There was something unspoken there, warm, complicated, unfamiliar. She crossed her arms almost as if to protect herself from it. I'm meeting with the board this afternoon, she said. They want to discuss the project's direction. And your involvement? Cal raised a brow. My involvement, she nodded. They don't understand why I'm giving someone without a title a seat at the table. Then maybe don't call it a seat, he said. Just call it listening. Vivian breathed out a soft laugh. That's good. You should say that in the meeting. I wasn't invited. You are now. She hesitated, then added, Come as you are. Don't change anything. That surprised him, and it showed. She stepped forward, holding something in her hand. A small piece of folded paper. I found this behind one of the old breaker panels, she said. You must have seen it. I did. She handed it to him. It was the watercolor sketch, the one Cyrus Langford had painted years before he became the man whose name crowned buildings. The words still legible across the top. You don't have to be seen to be loved. I think he painted it for me, Vivian said softly. I was maybe 5. I barely remember it. But seeing it now, it feels like something I forgot I needed. Cal studied the drawing again. Funny how what we think we've lost keeps showing up, he said. Their eyes locked again, longer this time. And there it was. Not a romance, not yet, but the spark of something that lived in the space between two people who had started to trust what they saw in each other. Vivian's phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. After the board meeting, I'd like you to stay, she said. I want to show you something. What is it you'll see? He nodded once, then stepped past her toward the hallway. But just before he turned the corner, he looked back. Vivian. She looked up. Thank you for letting it matter. She didn't smile, but her eyes did. Later that afternoon, Cal walked into the boardroom. No suit, no pretense. Just a clean shirt, a canvas notebook tucked under his arm, and the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent a lifetime paying attention. The room was full board members, department heads, Jordan seated near the far end, hands folded, watching everything. Vivian stood at the head of the table. No slides, No charts, just presence. Before we begin, she said, I want to introduce someone. This is Cal Mercer. He's been working here for 6 weeks. You've seen his name in maintenance reports, but I think you should hear his voice in something more. There was a pause. One board member, Dr. Hallstrom, always the skeptic, raised a brow. He's a janitor. No, Vivian said. He's a storyteller. Cal stepped forward, slow and steady. He opened his notebook, glanced down, then closed it again. I've been in rooms like this, he began, though not from this side of the table. I served on ships, in service bays, emergency shelters, and now I'm here. He paused. Let the weight land. Sometimes the loudest voices come from the smallest places. Places like this. Places that get cleaned in the dark and emptied before dawn. He held up the tag Vivian's father's, now polished, strung on a fresh chain. This tag isn't special because of the name on it. It's special because of the silence it carried. 10 years I kept it, not to hide it, to understand it. And when I finally gave it back, it wasn't about honor. It was about timing. He looked at Vivian. She was ready to hear what it meant. The room was still. Cal didn't need to say more. He stepped back. Vivian looked at her board. I won't be building the legacy wing as proposed, she said. Instead, we're creating a space for quiet impact, for those who serve without applause, the ones we overlook, the ones who teach us what dignity really is. There was hesitation, confusion, even resistance, but no one interrupted, because they felt it too, that something sacred had been said. After the meeting, as the room emptied, Vivian caught up with Cal just outside the elevator. She didn't speak right away, just stood there beside him. You were right, she said eventually. About what? Sometimes you don't need a seat. You just need someone to listen. The elevator dinged. She didn't get on. Come with me. He followed. Through the West Hall, past locked galleries, until she opened a door that hadn't been touched in years. A small room, empty, quiet. She flicked on the light. I want to start here, she said. No plaques, no speeches, just truth. Cal stepped inside, looked around. Then let's make it speak softly, he said. She turned toward him, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to lead. She felt like she had someone beside her, and it felt good to share the silence. The small room still smelled like old paint and dust. It hadn't been used in years, once a meditation gallery now forgotten. The lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a soft glow on the worn hardwood floor. Vivian stood in the center of the space, arms crossed, as if imagining the future in her head, before it had a name. Cal walked slowly along the walls, brushing his fingertips over the uneven patches, the corners where time had curled the plaster ever so slightly. There was something honest about it, unpolished, imperfect, but still standing. This is where you want to start, he said. Vivian nodded. It doesn't have to be big, just real. He turned toward her. What do you see here? She hesitated. Stories, she said quietly, of people who never got thanked, the ones whose hands built the stages, who held the lights, who stayed when everyone else went home. Cal watched her as she spoke. There was something different in her voice now. Not performance, not control, just conviction. She glanced over and caught him looking. What she asked. You're different when you talk about them. Different how softer. She looked away, almost shy. Maybe that's who I was supposed to be all along. Before Cal could respond, the silence was broken by the sound of footsteps echoing down the hall. A moment later, Jordan appeared in the doorway. There you are, he said. The trustees are asking why the West Wing renovation hasn't been submitted for permit. They think it's delayed. Vivian didn't answer right away. Tell them it's evolving, she said finally. Jordan frowned. That won't hold them for long. I'm not trying to hold them, she said. I'm trying to change them. His eyes moved between her and Cal. He didn't say it, but something about the way he stood made it clear he noticed the shift. In her. In them. I'll relay the message, he said, then turned and left. Cal exhaled slowly once the echo faded. That's going to get people talking, he said. They're already talking. Not just about the gallery. Vivienne met his eyes. I know. The air between them grew heavier, not uncomfortable, but charged. She stepped closer, slowly. You ever wonder why things feel easier when you're not pretending, she asked. All the time, he said. A pause. You think this is going too fast? She asked, barely above a whisper. Cal shook his head. No, he said. I think it's finally catching up. She took a breath like she hadn't realized she'd been holding one. Then a shift. I want to meet her, Vivienne said. Cal blinked. Who, Maisie? A quiet beat passed before he answered. You sure? She nodded. If we're building something honest, I want to know what matters to you. And she does. Cal looked down, touched. She's everything. I want to see that. He smiled softly. All right. Just then, Marcia's voice echoed from the hallway. Vivienne, you have a call. Vivienne turned toward the sound, then back to Cal. I'll call you tonight. I'll be up. She hesitated, then walked past him, pausing in the doorway. This room, she said. It's going to change people. He nodded. Starting with us. That night the house was quiet. Maisie sat cross-legged on the living room rug, her sketchbook open in front of her. Cal was on the couch reading an old hardcover with yellowed pages, his glasses sliding slightly down his nose. Dad, she said, without looking up. Yeah, Sweet Pea, what's she like? Cal looked over the edge of the book. Who? The woman from your work, the one you gave the necklace to. He smiled, setting the book down. It's not a necklace, it's a dog tag. Belonged to her dad. Oh, Maisie said, still drawing. She looked kind of sad on the news. She was. Maisie thought for a second. Is she mean? No, Cal said. She just forgot how to feel quiet things. Maisie looked up. You're going to see her again? Yes. She blinked slowly. Are you going to like her? He didn't answer right away. Then softly, I already do. Maisie nodded, then returned to her sketching. I'll draw her nice then. Cal's heart swelled. The next day, Vivienne stood in the gravel lot of a modest public park on the east side, not far from the water, not marked by anything grand. Just swings, benches, and a view. Cal arrived in his truck, Maisie hopping out first with her sketchpad hugged to her chest. Vivienne smiled. Nervous, natural. Maisie looked up at her, studied her, then held out her hand. I made you something. Vivienne knelt to her level. Can I see it? Maisie nodded and unfolded a page. It was a drawing of 3 hands, one small one worn, and one with a bracelet that looked just like Vivienne's. In the middle, the words, "We don't need to match to hold something together." Vivienne's breath caught. It's beautiful, she whispered. Maisie shrugged. I can do another one if you want. No, Vivienne said. I want to keep this one forever. Cal stood behind her, watching, heart full. Vivienne looked back at him. She's amazing. She's her mother, Cal said softly. Vivienne touched Maisie's shoulder, gentle and warm, then stood, and for a moment she and Cal were just 2 people in a park. No legacy, no boardroom, no past between them, only what they were choosing to build. And they were building something, slowly, carefully, together. The gallery smelled like fresh paint and hope. The walls had been stripped, repatched, and coated in soft linen white. No gilded frames, no plaques with donor names, just space, honest and wide open. Cal stood on a short wooden ladder, adjusting the spotlight above a small wooden shelf near the corner. Below it sat a single item, a worn lunchbox placed exactly as it had been found weeks ago in the staff maintenance locker. Inside a folded napkin with a handwritten note, "Don't forget your worth. Love, Mom." Vivian had insisted it stay. "I don't want symbols of power," she'd said. "I want traces of care." Today, the room was being prepped for the soft opening. No media, no press, just internal staff and a few community members. People who'd contributed stories. People whose quiet hands had shaped this place without ever asking to be seen. Cal stepped off the ladder and checked the light. It cast a soft halo over the lunchbox, not too bright. Just enough. Vivian entered behind him, carrying a small crate filled with more objects, anonymous tokens from staff members. A folded bus schedule, a ring of janitor's keys, a cracked badge from a retired security guard. She set the crate down and exhaled brushing dust off her shirt. "No heels today?" Cal asked with a smirk. She looked down at her sneakers, then at him. Didn't feel right. "You're learning." She raised a brow. "You saying I wasn't before?" He shrugged, teasing. "I'm saying you're listening better now." Their eyes met, warm, easy. But the moment was broken by Jordan's voice from the hallway. "Vivian." She turned. "In here." Jordan stepped in, tablet in hand, his face unreadable. "There's something you need to see," he said. She studied him. "What is it?" He held out the screen. A news post, local paper, Langford Legacy Wing, canceled sources. Say, unprofessional influence from staff member, prompted shift below it, an image of Cal. Blurry, but unmistakable. Vivian's stomach dropped. Cal leaned forward slightly. "Where'd they get this?" "Someone leaked it," Jordan said. "The board's already seen it. Let me guess," she muttered. "Hallstrom." Jordan didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Vivian clicked her tongue, then handed back the tablet. "I'll handle it," Vivian Jordan said, cautious now. "They're using this to question your judgment." "I'm aware." Jordan hesitated, eyes flicking toward Cal, then back. "This might affect the funding for next quarter." Vivian didn't blink. "Then we find different funding." Jordan held her gaze a second longer, then nodded. "I'll let them know." As he left, Cal turned to her slowly. "You knew they wouldn't like this," he said. "I didn't do it for them." "You sure?" She looked up at him, something raw beneath the usual poise. "I'm sure." A pause passed between them, thick with unspoken tension. "They're going to push you, Vivian. Harder than before. You ready for that?" She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "I'm more afraid of becoming someone I wouldn't recognize." Cal nodded. That's the right kind of fear. She smiled barely, but her phone buzzed. Again. And again. She silenced it, shoved it in her pocket. "I need air. Walk with me," Cal said. They left the gallery together and stepped out into the inner courtyard, brick paths, winding through old trees, sun peeking through Spanish moss. Vivian sat on the stone bench near the fountain. Cal sat beside her. For a moment they just listened to water, to birds, to the hush of wind through leaves. "I don't know why this matters so much," she said suddenly. "I've built programs, funded scholarships, restored wings. But this room, this quiet little room, it feels more honest than everything I've done combined." Cal leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because it's the first thing you didn't build for applause." She looked at him. Soft, a little broken, a little mended. "You think they're right? That I'm being unprofessional? I think you're being real." She let out a breath. "That scares me. It, should he said, means it matters." Vivian reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Maisie's drawing. The one with the 3 hands. She unfolded it gently, smoothing the creases with care. I keep this with me now, she said. It reminds me that legacy isn't something you put your name on. It's something you pass on. Cal's throat tightened. She'll be proud of you. Vivian's voice lowered. Will you tell her that he turned to her? The shift in her voice wasn't casual. It was layered invitation and uncertainty wrapped into one. He nodded. I will. Another pause. A bird called out somewhere in the trees. Vivian stood slowly. I need to face them. The board. I'll meet with them tomorrow. Cal rose too. I'll be here. She looked up at him, searching. I'm not just dragging you into a mess, am I? He smiled, slow and sure. You didn't drag me. I walked. Their eyes held. Then, unexpectedly, unplanned, Vivian reached for his hand. Not a grip. Just a touch. And he didn't let go. In that courtyard, beneath the morning sun and soft breath of trees, something unspoken shifted. Not the beginning, but something close. Rain came soft over Charleston the next morning, turning the cobblestones into mirrors. The sky was low gray, quiet, the kind of weather that softened everything, even the edges of worry. Vivian stood just inside the Institute's lobby, hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she hadn't touched. The rain traced slow lines down the glass, matching the thoughts threading through her head. She had 30 minutes before her meeting with the board. 30 minutes to convince a room of polished power players that her father's legacy wasn't being dismantled, but rewritten. And not in marble. She turned as the elevator dinged. Cal stepped out, umbrella tucked under one arm, a file folder in hand. You came early, she said. You looked like you'd need a steady voice. She smiled, though it barely reached her eyes. You always know. He nodded towards the hallway. Come with me a second. Vivian hesitated, then followed him down the west corridor, the one few staff used anymore. They passed quiet offices. Lights dimmed until they reached a narrow door marked Archives. Inside, rows of old cabinets lined the room, metal drawers labeled in fading marker. This was where the Langford Institute stored its forgotten history. Cal flipped a light switch. Warm gold flickered overhead. What are we doing here? She asked. He moved to the third cabinet on the left and pulled a file from a drawer near the bottom. Your father's original planning notes, he said. For the Institute. Vivian froze. She stepped closer slowly. Cal opened the file and laid it flat on a small table. Yellowed papers, blueprints, handwritten margins in ink that bled slightly through the page. She reached for the first sheet. Handwritten in the top corner. Quiet doesn't mean invisible. It means steady. Build steady things. CL. Her breath caught. I never saw these, she whispered. Someone boxed them up when the expansion started. I found them last week while clearing space for the new lighting panels. Vivian brushed her fingers over her father's handwriting. He had always been a man of few words, but this felt like a voice from the other side of the veil. Why show me this now? She asked. Because they'll ask you today why you're changing everything. And you don't need to quote me. He tapped the top of the page. You can quote him. Vivian swallowed hard. Thank you, she said softly. Cal nodded. You're not alone in this. Her eyes lifted to meet his. There was a pause, then something shifted between them. Not just the rhythm, but the weight. I don't want to walk this alone, she said, quieter than before. Not just the board, any of it. Cal held her gaze. Then don't. Their hands didn't touch, but something else did. Outside, the rain began to slow. Later that afternoon, the boardroom was stiff with anticipation. Jordan sat near the middle of the table, tablet, open though he wasn't tapping it. just watching. Dr. Hallstrom adjusted his cufflinks with slow irritation. We were told this would be a formal proposal, not another speech. Vivian stood at the head of the table. No slideshow, no handouts. Just the file folder Cal had given her, and a single photograph clipped to the front. The original blueprint of the Institute, dated in her father's handwriting. "This isn't a speech," she said. "It's a return to the foundation of what this place was meant to be." Hallstrom frowned. "Miss Langford, we all respect your father's service." "I don't think you do," she said, cutting gently, "because you keep turning his name into a performance." The room fell still. Vivian opened the folder and laid out the papers. "My father built this place to reflect quiet dignity, not to impress donors, not to feed egos. He wanted stories, unseen ones, to have walls to live on." She held up the dog tag. "This was returned to me by someone who understood that better than I ever did. It belonged to my father, but for 10 years, it lived with someone who never asked for credit, who waited for the right moment to give it back." Eyes flicked toward Cal, seated at the far end of the room. Vivian's voice steadied. "We're not building a legacy wing anymore. We're creating the quiet room, a permanent space in the Institute for those who served without being seen. Janitors, nurses, cafeteria workers, volunteers, custodians of kindness." A long beat. Jordan shifted slightly in his seat, lips tight, but his eyes, Vivian noticed, weren't cold. They were careful, measuring something else now. Hallstrom leaned back, expression unreadable. "This could cost us high-level funding," he said. "Then we'll rebuild with people who care about substance." Vivian replied. She didn't flinch. Silence followed. Then, slowly, Jordan spoke. "I think it's time we stopped asking what sells and started asking what stays." Vivian looked at him, surprised. He nodded. "I support this." The room stirred, and just like that the tide began to turn. Not with a bang, but with a shift. When the meeting ended, the hallway was empty, except for Cal waiting near the window. She walked to him slowly. "Well," he asked. She exhaled. They didn't clap, but they didn't stop it either. "Quiet approval," he said. "Fitting." She smiled, warm and tired. Then gently, "Do you want to see something?" He nodded. She led him up the side stairs to the rooftop terrace, usually locked, usually empty. Tonight it was soaked in mist and fading light. "I used to come here when things got heavy," she said. I stopped for a long time. Cal looked out at the Charleston skyline. "It's peaceful." She turned toward him. "I want peace with you." The words landed like rain on warm ground. He looked at her. "No hurry, no grand gesture, just truth. You already have it." And in the soft gray hush above the city, they stood together, not making promises, just honoring the quiet that was already beginning to grow between them. Something honest, something steady, something worth building. The quiet room opened on a Thursday. There were no velvet ropes, no speeches, no music. Just a sign at the entrance, modest wood-carved, hung with care, for those who served without a spotlight. Inside the space breathed. Soft lighting bathed the room in amber warmth. Along the walls, everyday objects told quiet stories. A lunchbox, a worn-out bus pass, a maintenance badge with edges rounded by time. Beneath each item, no names, only descriptions like, "This belonged to someone who stayed late to make others feel safe." That morning, a few staff filtered in. Some paused, some sat. Some simply stood in front of the objects like they were hearing something for the first time. Cal watched from the side, his hands tucked in his pockets. He didn't need to say much. Just seeing people linger in silence was enough. Vivian arrived just after 10, coffee in hand, her usual sharp presence softened by something quieter. She stopped beside him, her eyes drifting to a framed photo on the back wall, an old image of her father handing out water bottles during a heat wave. He wasn't speaking, just passing them out one by one. He hated cameras, she said softly. Cal nodded. That's why this room feels like him. Vivian sipped her coffee and turned toward him. Maisie coming today, she's got a class project, Cal said, but she made something. He pulled out a folded sheet from his back pocket and handed it over. Vivian opened it carefully. Another drawing. This time it was the quiet room itself, drawn from memory. A wall, a bench, the objects on display. But in the center, Maisie had drawn 3 people. Not labeled, but it was clear who they were. Vivian's eyes softened. She's good, she whispered. She sees people. Vivian smiled, then slipped the drawing into her bag. I want it displayed. Cal raised a brow. You sure she's part of this story? Just then, Jordan entered holding a sleek envelope. Vivian turned as he approached. This just came through donor relations, he said, offering her the envelope. No return address, just this note. She took it and opened the flap. Inside a check. A large one, 7 figures. Alongside it, a handwritten note. Thank you for reminding us that legacy is about presence, not power. Keep building. Vivian stared at the note, breath catching. Jordan's eyes widened as he glanced at the check. Do we know who know? She said. And that's the point. She turned to Cal, a stunned laugh escaping. This changes everything. No, Cal said. Calm. This confirms it. Later that day, Vivian returned to her office, the check and note in hand. She stood in front of the window, the city stretching out below her. But her mind wasn't on money. It was on a memory. Her father, years ago, sitting in this same office, holding her science fair ribbon. Not a first-place trophy, just a ribbon. You didn't win, she'd said. He'd smiled. You showed up. That counts more than a medal. She hadn't understood then. She did now. Her thoughts were broken by a knock. Cal stepped in his coat, slung over one arm. I was about to head out, he said. Maisie's got choir rehearsal. Vivian nodded. Walk with me, he asked. She didn't hesitate. The two of them moved through the halls, quiet now. Evening was settling in. The lights had dimmed to a soft glow. As they passed the quiet room, Vivian paused. Inside, a single visitor stood still in front of the photo of her father. A young man in a food service uniform. He wasn't crying, but something in his shoulders had shifted. A release. A remembering. Cal noticed, too. They didn't interrupt. They walked on. Outside, the air was cool, tinged with jasmine and wet pavement. Vivian pulled her jacket close. You remember what you said the first day we met? She asked. Cal grinned. I remember thinking you didn't see me. I didn't. They reached his truck. He opened the door, but didn't get in. Vivian leaned against the passenger side. I'm still figuring it out, she admitted. So am I. She looked at him. The porch lights from the Institute glowed behind them, casting long shadows across the gravel. I'm not great at this, she said. At what? Letting someone stay? Cal looked at her, unflinching. Then let's just start with not walking away. Vivian's breath caught. Not because of the words, but because of how much they landed. Not walking away. She nodded slowly. I can do that. They stood there saying nothing more. The night didn't rush them. Neither did the past. And in that stillness they found something rare. Not resolution, but the kind of understanding that doesn't need to be spoken out loud, the kind that simply stays. A week passed, and the quiet room began to ripple outward. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't fast, but it was steady. One visitor told another. A local teacher brought her class. Then a hospital staff supervisor asked if she could bring a group after hours. Word spread through Care Not campaigns. Inside the Langford Institute, something else was changing too. People started talking in the hallways, not just about meetings or deadlines, but about things that mattered. Who their grandparents were, who fixed the elevators during the hurricane 5 years back, who stayed behind after everyone left. Vivian noticed it in the small things. A door held open longer. A thank you note left on a janitor's cart. A kind of awareness taking root. But not everything was smooth. On a brisk Thursday morning, Jordan stepped into Vivian's office without knocking his face tight calm, in that practiced way that meant he was holding something back. She looked up from her desk. "What is it?" "There's a situation," he said. "Downtown. One of our main benefactors is pulling their support." Vivian straightened. "Which one?" "The Whitmore Foundation. They said our shift in messaging doesn't align with their priorities." Her stomach tightened. "Did they say that directly?" In not so many words. He paused, then added, "They've also pulled their planned art donation, that modern sculpture series." Vivian leaned back quiet for a long moment. "They were always transactional," she said. "We knew that." "Yes, but losing them means we lose visibility with a whole network of similar partners. I'm not going to build rooms for applause, Jordan. We've come too far for that." "I agree," he said. "But we need to think ahead. Public perception is shifting. Some people love what we're doing. Others are starting to call it sentimentalism." Vivian's jaw tightened. Sentimentality isn't weakness, it's memory. He studied her. "Then gently, I think you need to get ahead of this." She raised an eyebrow. "How tell the story before someone else does?" She looked at him a little surprised by the advice, but she knew he was right. Still, there was more on her mind. That evening, Cal stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup, while Maisie sat at the table finishing a drawing of their porch. The air smelled like rosemary and cornbread, and the quiet between them was warm and lived in. "You going to see her again tonight?" Maisie asked, not looking up. Cal glanced over, wiping his hands on a towel. "I might." "Do you like her? He paused, caught between a laugh and a breath. "Yeah," he said. "I like her. Maisie smiled. "She's different now than when she was on the news. She's always been that person. Just took her a while to show it." Maisie looked up. "You helped her." Cal tilted his head. "She helped me too." Later, when he arrived at the Institute after hours, Vivian was in the gallery, standing beneath the soft light of the quiet room, staring at the photo of her father again. He walked up beside her quietly. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "I'm not sure." Cal waited. She turned to him slowly, something brimming behind her eyes. "I'm scared," she said. "Not of losing support. Not even of failure. I'm scared I'm finally doing something honest, and people still might walk away." Cal took a breath, then leaned against the wall beside her. "You can't control who stays. I know. But you can be proud of what they saw while they were here." Vivian closed her eyes a moment, then opened them and faced him. "I want to share the real story," she said. "Not just press releases, not just blurbs on a website. I want to tell people what this room means, why we changed direction, why we—" She stopped. Cal looked at her, waiting. "Why we matter," she finished softly. He nodded. "Then do it." She turned toward him, voice lower now. "I want you to be in it." Cal hesitated. "Vivian, I didn't sign up to be the face of anything." "You're not a face," she said. "You're a voice. And voices like yours don't get heard enough." He thought about it. About the life he lived before all of this, the long nights cleaning halls no one noticed, the letters he never sent, the dog tag in his drawer. Finally, he nodded. "Okay." Vivian exhaled, relieved. Then for a long moment they just looked at each other. "What are we doing, Cal?" she asked softly. Right now she nodded. "We're standing in the middle of something real," he said, "and trying not to mess it up." She smiled, but there was something tender behind it. "I don't want to mess it up." "Then don't walk away," he said. "I won't." They didn't kiss, not yet. But her hand found his, and this time he didn't wait to meet it. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees along the street. The world kept moving. But inside that room they stood still, anchored by something honest, something earned. And for now, that was enough. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Vivian found it on her desk, slipped beneath a printout of donor reports. No return address, just her name written in tight, careful handwriting. The envelope was cream-colored thick, the kind her father used for handwritten memos. She sat down slowly and opened it. The letter was short. "This is not what the Langford Institute was built for. You're diluting a legacy. Don't confuse sentiment with substance. No name. Just that." She read it twice. Then again. It wasn't the first note of disapproval she'd received since the quiet room opened, but something about this one, its stillness, its choice of words, hit her deeper. Maybe because it echoed the fear she hadn't said out loud that she was trading structure for softness. She folded the letter neatly, set it aside, and stood. Outside, the clouds pressed low over Charleston, heavy with unshed rain. By the time Cal arrived later that afternoon, he found her in the quiet room, sitting on the floor against the far wall. Knees pulled up, shoes off, hair falling over one eye, like she hadn't noticed. He stepped in quietly. "You okay?" She didn't look up. "I think I just realized something." "What's that?" She rubbed the edge of her sleeve between two fingers. "I built this room for the invisible ones. But part of me, I think I hoped building it would make me feel seen too." Cal walked over and sat beside her on the floor. The wood was cool beneath them, the lights soft as always. "That's not selfish," he said after a moment. "It feels like it. It's human." She turned to him then. Her eyes weren't wet, but they were tired. "Honest. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. You're telling the truth. That's enough." She shook her head, frustrated. "People are still pulling support. They're saying I've lost direction, that I'm making this about feelings instead of future planning." "And are you?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Maybe a little." Cal was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "Do you want to hear what I think?" She nodded. "I think most of them never knew what this place was really for. They just liked what it looked like from the outside. Clean, controlled, predictable." He paused. "You took something polished and gave it a heartbeat." Vivian swallowed hard. "I'm just scared I'm the only one who hears it." "You're not." They sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for answers, just presence. Finally, she leaned her head on his shoulder. Lightly. Like she didn't want to assume it was okay. But he didn't move. He let her stay there. "Do you ever miss who you were before all this?" she asked. Cal thought for a long moment. "Sometimes, but only when I forget how much fuller life feels now." She smiled faintly. Then her phone buzzed on the bench behind them. She didn't move to grab it. Not right away. But the buzz came again. Cal looked over. "You should check." She sighed and picked it up. A text from Jordan. "Need you to come to the third-floor conference room. Now. Something urgent." Vivian sat up, pulse picking up. "I should go." Cal stood with her. "You want me to come?" She shook her head. "Not yet." The conference room was already buzzing when she arrived. Jordan was at the far end talking with two board members in low tones. The air felt charged, like something had already happened before she walked in. "What's going on?" she asked. Jordan turned. He handed her a tablet. Vivian stared at the screen. A video. Posted just hours ago. It showed a quietly recorded segment of a donor roundtable, someone speaking candidly, unaware they were being filmed. "Vivian Langford is abandoning the Institute's original mission," the man said. "She's romanticizing labor, turning heritage into pity." Another voice chimed in. "She's emotionally compromised. There's a janitor involved now, isn't there? It's all too messy." Vivian's hands clenched. Jordan spoke gently. "It's spreading fast. They're calling for a reevaluation of your leadership." She stared at the screen, then shut off the tablet. "They're right about one thing," she said, her voice low but steady. "I am emotionally involved." She looked at Jordan, then the others. "And I won't apologize for it." Jordan's eyes flicked toward the board members, uncertain. Vivian stepped forward. "I have given more to this place than anyone else here, not just money. Time. Grief. Blood when it came to holding things together after my father passed. But I won't stand still for people who think compassion is a flaw." She paused. "The Institute isn't broken, but what it was before it wasn't honest. It was performative. It catered to the already seen." She let out a breath. "I'm not leaving." The room went quiet. No one spoke. Jordan cleared his throat. "That'll complicate things." "I hope it does," Vivian said. "Change always does." And with that, she turned and walked out. The air outside the building was thick, heavy with the promise of rain again. This time she didn't go back to her office. She didn't go to her car. She walked. To the park, where she met Maisie. To the old bench with the uneven legs and peeling paint. She sat there in her dress pants and heels and closed her eyes. After a while, footsteps approached. She didn't have to look. Cal sat down beside her, silent. "How'd you know I'd come here?" she asked. "You look for quiet when you need strength." She turned to him. "I'm not sure if I made everything worse today." He looked at her, kind and clear. "No," he said. "You just stopped letting the wrong people write the story." Vivian blinked, heart-catching, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel alone in it. She felt held and seen. The sun had barely risen, but the Langford Institute's quiet room was already awake. It was Cal's day off, technically. But he came in early, unlocking the rear entrance with that quiet rhythm. He carried the kind of presence you notice, not when it enters, but when it's missing. He didn't bring cleaning supplies this time. No work gloves. Just a coffee from the corner shop and a folded envelope in his jacket pocket. Vivian had asked to meet him there, though her text was short, even for her. "I need your eyes on something. And maybe your voice." When he entered, the lights were already on. Not the harsh fluorescence, but the soft amber tones she insisted on. The ones that made the metal on the janitor's keys catch light like gold. Vivian stood near the far wall, a box at her feet. Her blazer was off sleeves rolled to her elbows, her hair pulled back in that neat, stubborn twist she used when something big was brewing. Cal stepped closer. "What's all this?" She looked up at him, her expression somewhere between determined and scared. "I want to go public." Cal raised an eyebrow. "Public how? Not just interviews. I want to host a panel, open to the city, stream it. Bring people who've worked behind the scenes in Charleston, custodians, bus drivers, caregivers. I want them to tell their stories, in their own words." Cal nodded slowly. "And you want me to speak?" It wasn't a question. Vivian's eyes searched his. "I do. But I won't ask if you're not ready." He took a breath, running a hand through his hair. You think they'll come people like me? They already have. They've just never been given a mic. She crouched down, opened the box, and pulled out a stack of printed flyers, early designs, simple and bold. The Quiet Voices series stories from the unseen hands who hold our cities together. Cal picked one up, thumbed the edge. This is good. Vivian stood brushing dust from her pants. I just don't know how to protect it. Cal looked at her. You don't. Her face stiffened. You don't protect it, Vivian. You share it. And if people try to twist it, you stay louder. Softer doesn't mean silent. She let that sit. Then nodded. He reached into his coat and handed her the envelope. She opened it, pulling out a small, worn photo. A young Cal, no more than 20, standing in front of an old apartment complex in a faded work uniform. His father beside him, same uniform, same proud stance. Your dad, she whispered. He taught me to mop floors like they were stages, Cal said. He used to say, how you do the small things is how you do everything. Vivian's hands tightened around the photo. I want to put this in the quiet room. Cal's jaw flexed. You sure? Only if you're sure. He gave a small nod. Then his voice softened. You think the board's going to support this panel? Vivian exhaled slowly. They won't stop it. That's enough. Cal smiled, but it faded just a touch as he looked at her more closely. You haven't said what you're afraid of. Vivian hesitated. I'm afraid that I've tied too much of myself to this. To you? Cal didn't move. I'm not afraid of that, he said. I'm afraid you'll run when it gets harder. Her breath caught. Then she stepped forward. I don't run anymore. He met her halfway, and this time when her hand reached for his, it wasn't tentative. It was knowing. They stood there in the center of the room between a cracked name badge and a folded maintenance schedule objects no one would ever place behind glass in a museum, but that somehow felt more sacred than all the art in the building. Vivian looked up at him. I need you there, not just as a story, but as my person. His voice was low. You already have me. Just then, Maisie peeked through the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, holding a sheet of construction paper. I finished my second drawing, she said shyly. Vivian turned, beaming. Can I see Maisie walked in and unfolded it, this one a picture of the quiet room again, but now it had people in the seats. A little girl with braids, a man with a mop, a woman holding a tray of food. And in the corner, two figures side by side, one in a dress, one in work boots. Vivian blinked back a rush of warmth. Maisie pointed to the figures. That's you and Daddy. I thought you looked good together. Cal looked over, eyes meeting Vivian's. Vivian crouched to Maisie's level. You have no idea how much this means to me. Maisie shrugged. I just like when you smile. Vivian stood the drawing in her hands. I want this to be the cover of the panel program, she said. Cal raised his eyebrows. You're serious? Vivian nodded. This story started because of her, because of what she sees. And then quietly, I don't want to forget what it means to be seen. Cal reached over and took her hand again. Maisie smiled, spinning in a slow circle between them. Outside, the morning light began to break through the gray, casting soft lines across the floor. And inside, something stronger than legacy, stronger than fear, took root. Not just love, but understanding. And the beginning of something even deeper. The air inside the Langford Institute buzzed with a quiet anticipation that felt unlike anything Vivian had experienced before. The auditorium had never held this kind of crowd, not for gallery openings or gala nights. This was different. Rows of folding chairs replaced velvet seats, no name tags, no catered appetizers, just real people with real stories seated shoulder to shoulder waiting. The first Quiet Voices panel was about to begin. Vivian stood backstage, holding a simple program printed on thick paper. At the bottom was Maisie's drawing, just as promised, soft crayon lines of people seen, heard, held in color. Her fingers rested on it for a moment, grounding herself. Jordan appeared beside her, dressed neatly but less formal than usual. He scanned the crowd from behind the curtain and gave a low whistle. You weren't exaggerating. Vivian glanced at him. About what people showing up for something that didn't promise them anything but honesty. She gave a faint smile. He looked at her, pausing. You know, when you first pitched the quiet room, I thought it was a sweet idea. A good PR move, maybe. But I didn't understand it. And now I still don't understand it all, he said. But I believe in it. She swallowed hard, nodding once. That was all she needed from him. Out in the front row, Vivian spotted Cal seated with Maisie on one side and Dr. Hallstrom of all people on the other. The sight almost made her laugh. Cal looked like he was gripping the arms of his chair to keep himself from fidgeting. Maisie sat calm as ever, her feet swinging gently, totally at ease. The house lights dimmed slightly. Vivian stepped forward. No stage, no podium, just a wooden stool and a mic stand. She took a breath as the hush spread across the room. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice strong, though her heart beat faster than she let show. This space isn't about looking back. It's about seeing clearly what's been here all along. She looked out at the audience. At my father's memorial, someone handed me something small, something that didn't sparkle, didn't shine. A dog tag. It belonged to him, and I hadn't seen it in years. That moment made me realize how much history we miss when we only look up. She paused. We miss the ones holding the ladders. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was listening. Vivian introduced the first speaker, a woman named Sonia, who had worked in housekeeping at the Institute since it opened. As Sonia spoke about cleaning the halls during hurricanes the way her team left granola bars and blankets in quiet corners for night shift nurses, the room leaned in. Next was Edward, a bus driver, who rerouted his personal time to make sure elderly residents could get to the Institute's free programs. He'd never told anyone, not even his boss. There were no tears for show, no theatrics, just truth. And people stayed, not just physically, but emotionally. You could feel it. Midway through, Vivian slipped into the empty seat beside Cal. He leaned in slightly. This is real. She nodded. His hand found hers under the program in her lap. No one could see it, but she didn't let go. When her turn came again at the end, she stood slowly, heart full but nerves raw. I want to close tonight with one more voice, she said, eyes locking with Cal's. Someone who reminded me that legacy isn't inherited, it's built. Quietly, daily, sometimes with a mop, sometimes with a moment. Cal blinked, surprised. Vivian? She nodded gently. Please. He hesitated, then stood. The room fell even quieter. He walked to the front, not fast, not showy, and took the mic with both hands. I was a janitor here for 14 years, he said simply. Still am some days. I cleaned the floors the night Mr. Langford passed, and when I found his tag tucked behind the sink, don't ask me how it got there, I held on to it thinking maybe one day it'd matter to someone again. He glanced toward Vivian. I didn't know then that it would. He cleared his throat. I've seen a lot of things get polished that weren't worth much, and I've seen things tossed out that should have been framed. A pause. You don't need a title to leave a mark. You just need someone to notice you were here. The mic caught the soft intake of breath across the crowd. Cal handed it back to Vivian and returned to his seat, quiet as ever. When she stepped forward one last time, she didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. Her eyes met the crowd, her voice catching only slightly as she said, "We noticed." And the applause wasn't loud because of volume. It was loud because of meaning. Later that night, as the room emptied, Vivian stayed behind with Cal Maisie asleep against his shoulder. They sat in the last row watching the staff stack chairs and gather forgotten programs. "I've never been more tired," she whispered. "But this tired feels good," he said. She smiled, resting her head against his arm. They sat there a long time. In the quiet, exactly where the story was always meant to land. It had been 3 days since the panel, but the ripples hadn't stopped. Local news stations picked it up first. Then an NPR segment. A few online blogs shared video clips from the panel Cal's voice most of all. Strangers started quoting his final line. "You don't need a title to leave a mark." It showed up on bumper stickers, on handmade signs outside community centers, on chalkboards in school lobbies. Vivian hadn't planned any of it. And for the first time, she wasn't trying to control the narrative. She let it spread. But even as momentum grew, something tugged at her, quiet, but persistent. She couldn't quite explain it. Until the envelope arrived. It was hand-delivered, no postage, no name on the outside. Her assistant left it on her desk with a sticky note dropped off around noon. No sender. Inside was a letter typed. "I thought you should know the board is discussing a leadership transition." Quietly, of course. "There's concern that this new direction may cause lasting instability. You still have time to steer it back. But the window is closing." Vivian sat there, still, the paper trembling slightly in her fingers. The words weren't cruel. That was the hardest part. They were calm, measured, designed to sound reasonable, but underneath they dripped with fear. Fear of change, fear of losing control, fear of what truth looked like without polish. She stared at the page until her eyes blurred. Then, slowly, she folded it and placed it inside her desk drawer. A few hours later, she stood on the rooftop of the Institute, arms wrapped around herself as the wind tugged at her coat. Below, the city stretched in amber light. People leaving offices, buses turning corners, children walking home with backpacks too big for their frames. She didn't hear him coming, but when Cal appeared beside her, she didn't flinch. He handed her a warm cup of tea. "You looked like you needed something steady." She took it without a word, grateful for the heat. He leaned on the railing beside her. "Bad news?" She didn't answer right away. "I think they're trying to push me out," she finally said. He was quiet for a long beat. "Because of what you built." "Because it worked," she said softly. "And now they're scared it'll work too well, that it'll shift what this place is allowed to stand for." Cal looked out over the city, jaw tight. "I hate that I'm not surprised." Vivian turned to face him. "What if they succeed?" Cal didn't blink. "They won't. You don't know that." "No," he said. "But I know you. And I know what this place feels like now. They can't undo that." She looked down at the street, watching headlights blur. "I'm tired of fighting." Cal's voice was gentler. "Then stop fighting. Start leading." She met his eyes. "People follow courage, Vivian, even when it looks quiet. Especially when it looks quiet." That night, she sat at her desk long after the building emptied. The lights were dim. The only sound was the soft hum of the air vents. She opened a fresh document on her laptop. And she began to write. Not a defense, not a proposal. A letter. To the staff, the donors, the public, the board, everyone. She told the story of the janitor who found her father's dog tag, the girl who drew a room that didn't exist yet, the daughter who finally saw what her father had always tried to teach her. She didn't dress it up. She didn't hold anything back. When she was done, she hit print. The next morning, copies were placed in every department, in the break room, at the security desks, in the mail slots of board members. It read like a story. but it landed like a manifesto. That afternoon, Jordan appeared in her office doorway holding one of the printed letters. "You're going to lose some people," he said quietly. "I already have," she replied, "but I've found the ones I want to build with." He nodded slowly, then surprised her by adding, "Count me in." Vivian blinked. Jordan shrugged. "I don't like messes, but I like meaning more." Later that day, as she walked through the Institute's halls, she passed clusters of staff reading the letter aloud to each other. Maintenance crews paused between rounds. Receptionists handed it to new hires. Something had shifted. Not because it was loud, but because it was true. And truth Vivian was learning didn't need a title to be heard. That evening she found Cal and Maisie waiting in the quiet room, 2 cups of coffee and a box of takeout between them. "Thought you might want dinner somewhere peaceful," Cal said. Vivian sat down beside them. Maisie offered her a napkin folded like a swan. "I made this at school. You can keep it." Vivian took it gently, pressing it to her heart. "Thank you." As they sat there eating quietly, surrounded by silent objects that spoke louder than most voices ever could, Vivian felt something loosen inside her. Not the fear. That would come and go. But the belief that she had to fix everything alone. She didn't. Not anymore. Spring had arrived in Charleston not with a roar, but with a hush. Soft breezes winding through the oak-lined streets, petals drifting like memory across the Institute courtyard. Inside the Langford building, light poured through tall windows that hadn't seen such brightness in years. The quiet room had changed, too. Not in structure, but in spirit. There were more photos now. More everyday objects that told real stories, a cafeteria tray worn at the edges, a name tag smudged with time, a handwritten note from a nurse to a night janitor, simply saying thank you. Each one chosen with care. Each one a voice. Vivian stood before the display that had become the heart of the room. It was Cal's father's mop, retired now polished and placed with reverence in a glass frame. Beneath it, a plaque with Cal's words, "The floor holds the weight of everything. If you clean it with love, you carry the whole building." She ran her fingers along the edge of the frame quietly, gently. It had been 6 months since the panel. 3 since the board met with her privately. They didn't fire her. They didn't even ask her to step down. Because something had shifted not just in the building but outside of it. The public stood up. Letters came in donations from unlikely places. Small checks from bus drivers, teachers, former janitorial staff. Each one included a note about how the Institute had reminded them of something they thought the world had forgotten: dignity. She hadn't just survived the board's threat. She had rewritten the rules. That morning she had one last task, one she hadn't told anyone about. She walked through the East Wing hallway, now lined with portraits not of donors, but of behind-the-scenes heroes. She passed Sonia's picture laughing mid-sentence in her cleaning uniform. Edward beside his bus holding a thank you card from a student. She reached the last frame. An empty one. Until now. She pulled a new photo from the envelope she'd been carrying. It was candid Cal holding Maisie on his hip outside the Institute after the panel, the sun catching his hair, her head on his shoulder. Neither of them looking at the camera. Just being. She secured it inside the frame, stepped back, and smiled. Behind her, a familiar voice broke the quiet. "You put us on the wall." Vivian turned. Cal stood there, hand in his pocket, eyebrow, lifted the hint of a smile, tugging at his mouth. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "I'm not sure I'm wall material." She walked over to him, tilting her head. "You've always been wall material. You just didn't see it." He exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Still getting used to this. This people looking at me like I built something, he said softly. Like I mattered before they had proof. Vivian's voice lowered. You mattered the first moment I met you. Cal searched her eyes, then asked the question neither of them had said out loud. What are we, Viv? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for his hand and held it like it belonged there because it did. We're a beginning, she whispered. Not a rescue, not a fairy tale, just real. He nodded, eyes softening. I like beginnings. Maisie's laughter echoed down the hall before her footsteps appeared. She ran to them out of breath, holding something in her hand. Aunt Viv. They picked my drawing for the new visitor's map Vivian crouched to see. Sure enough, Maisie had sketched the Institute in her familiar crayon style, colorful, warm, full of people. Not just walls. At the center was the quiet room. Two figures holding hands stood right at the door. One wore a long coat, the other a pair of boots. Vivian looked at the drawing, then at Cal, who smiled down at her. We should get this framed. Maisie grinned. Again, every masterpiece deserves a gallery, Vivian said. They walked together toward the lobby. The building hummed not with busyness, but with intention. People talking, doors opening, laughter spilling from classrooms. A living place. As they passed the front desk, Jordan caught Vivian's eye. Quick update, he said. We're at full booking for the next 3 panels, and Channel 5 called again. They want a follow-up segment. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Tell them we'll talk. But they don't get to narrate this time. We do. He grinned. Yes, ma'am? Outside the courtyard glowed under early sun. Students sat on benches. A teacher read to children in a circle on the lawn. And the mural, once stark and colorless, had been repainted by local artists, now vibrant with handprints and soft quotes from the people who had made this place matter. Maisie ran ahead toward the mural. Vivian and Cal followed side by side. She glanced over at him, her voice quiet again. I think I spent my whole life trying to be important. Cal looked at her gently. You are? No, I thought importance meant being seen, having your name on things, being in charge. She paused, brushing her hair behind her ear. But this feeling, this place, I think this is what it really means. Cal nodded. To be part of something bigger than yourself. To be part of something true. They stood for a while, watching Maisie press her palm into blue paint and add her mark to the wall. And then Vivian did something she hadn't done in a long, long time. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and let it all sink in. The legacy she'd thought she had to uphold was never about marble floors or formal names. It was about people. It was about rooms that listened, hands that served, voices that had waited years to be heard. And in that moment, on a quiet morning in the heart of the city she once tried to manage from behind glass, Vivian Langford finally felt whole. Not finished, but whole. And that was more than enough.